While the kids of today are growing up with Tom Holland's Spider-Man and those early last decade grew up with Andrew Garfield, back in mine and many other people's days, we all grew up with Tobey Maguire and his Spider-Man trilogy directed by Sam Raimi. Admittedly, some parts of these movies haven't aged as well as many people say they have, but I'll be honest, I don't care. The Raimi trilogy was truly the start of the comic book movie boom, and it rightfully holds this title. So why not start at the beginning with 2002 Spider-Man, a movie which is, in my opinion, still a perfect origin story movie. It'll drag and feel dated in a few places, but honestly, you only notice that if you overthink it before you watch it, because while you watch the film, it's an absolute blast to get through. The opening 15 minutes or so of the spider bite and Norman Osborn trialing his own formula quickly sets things into motion with no beating around the bush. The movie knows what we're here to see, but before you know it, Peter is discovering his new abilities and struggling to get a hold of them, deciding to use them in an attempt to earn some cash to impress Mary Jane, only for the character of Peter Parker to come through in the process. One of the key character components of Spider-Man is how easy it is to lose what you love, and in this case that is Uncle Ben. The fact that Peter isn't perfect and makes some mistakes with the consequences being dire, such as the murder of Ben, what I'm trying to say is Uncle Ben dies in this movie because of Peter not doing the right thing out of spite of what just happened to himself. The consequences Peter faces in life are seriously large no matter how much good he does, and this trilogy will exemplify that. Of course, up until this point, Peter hasn't exactly done much good yet, but it's Uncle Ben who inspires him to do the good things. With great power comes great responsibility is a message that is echoed throughout all of these movies. It starts with Peter misusing his powers, using it for vengeance, but as he reflects upon the incident and the fact that he could have prevented what happened, that creates a spark that inspires him to put on the mask and to be Spider-Man, to help those who can't help themselves, all at his expense. Simply because it's the right thing to do, and Peter comes to understand this throughout the movie. It's one of the reasons why people love Spider-Man so much. He's a selfless individual. He can't catch a break, all the while he can very easily just make his life easier by just handing over the mask, but he doesn't. Being Spider-Man is a choice at the end of the day, but he chooses to get back up each time and put on that mask because it is the right thing to do, because that's what Uncle Ben stood for. And let's also just applaud Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin for a moment as well. This is hands down my personal favourite Spider-Man villain. He's just brilliant. A villain who is designed to be sympathetic but sometimes doesn't let us feel that way. Norman Osborn was a victim to his own arrogance and desperation in that he believed his research and science was ready to be put out into the world, conducting the experiment on himself, turning himself into what would be known as the Green Goblin as dubbed by the Bugle. A darker half of himself that he has no control over whatsoever, taking over when it pleases, talking to the Norman side and manipulating him into doing bad things such as bomb the rival business, murder the Oscorp board members, attack Aunt May, burn a building, hold Mary Jane and children hostage, and attempt to murder them. Goblin is a savage villain that wants nothing but to have revenge on those who have wronged Norman, and to cause as much damage and devastation as possible to people like Peter. Norman is back in control of his body every so often, but forgets about anything that happens while Goblin is in control, him only finding out through Goblin or news articles about what he did. He's a truly menacing villain and provides stellar performance as the character. Tobey Maguire, however, can pull off the awkward and nerdy side of Peter really well, but you just can't take him seriously in this movie, when he's in the action without the mask and sometimes with it. He's not my personal favourite Spider-Man, but I can admit he probably has the best writing as Spider-Man. He is more than willing to give up what he loves to protect what he loves, no matter how much it hurts. Spider-Man is a movie which provides us, the audience, joy, hope, and above all else hope. Hope that one day everything will just work out in the end. It's an American movie designed to give the American people hope after the tragic events that were 9/11 at the time. You know, the symbolism of Spider-Man in front of the American flag, it checks out and it is something to inspire the American people. Same with the cliche of the New York people banding together. The movie is designed to inspire us all to be the best versions of ourselves. It's a movie about love, about sacrifice, but above all else, responsibility. We can't shrug aside the amazing cinematography either. The swinging scenes are filmed in a way that really reflects scale, speed and intensity and was quite innovative for the time. The lighting in scenes is used to reflect emotion and, slightly off topic, the suit. This suit is usually most people's favourite, you know, the res webbing and the pointed eyes and the sharp spider design. It's such an appealing suit, but it isn't my personal favourite, but it is definitely up there. It's a fantastic movie that set the bar for what comic book movies can be and should be, shaping cinema for decades to follow. You know, there's a reason why people applaud Tobey Maguire so much whenever they talk about him. He's the one who kicked everything off, really. He provided that interpretation of the character that people love to death even today, and that is simply because of how well he did it. You know, at the time there wasn't a cinematic Spider-Man that people could really watch. They had the animated series and the comic books, but there wasn't a true cinematic blockbuster like this film. And when it came out, obviously people were going to flock to the cinema to see it, and it very rightfully became one of the highest grossing movies of all time, and it still is probably one of the highest grossing superhero movies of all time. Of course, the genre has since expanded. We now have the MCU, which has the likes of the Avengers and their interpretation of Spider-Man and things like that, which will outperform these movies by a long shot simply because of how new the technology is these days, with the CGI and the more advanced storytelling that aims to mash together, years and years of movies and cinema. It's an extended universe for a reason, and I do believe if Raimi did get the chance to do something like this back in the day, or if they allow him to do something similar to it now and maybe contribute to the MCU outside of Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, I do think maybe we could have seen something really neat with Spider-Man. If Spider-Man was never put into the MCU, I do believe, fast forward a few years, around this time, we may have gotten a Spider-Man extended universe. We have Tom Hardy's Venom now, and we are soon getting Morbius. And since we've just come out of Spider-Man No Way Home with these two characters making their return, by two characters I mean Tobey Maguire and Willem Dafoe, I do think that they could have maybe found a way to put Tobey Maguire in those movies, or maybe even the other Spider-Men, like Andrew Garfield. It's probably a concept that they might think about in the future, because Sony does own the rights to Spider-Man and other properties relating to Spider-Man, such as Venom and Morbius, so why not make a universe out of it? The only reason they probably can't do that right now is because of what Tom Holland is like in the MCU. He's the shine out Spider-Man at the moment, but people do appreciate the other Spider-Men more than ever nowadays. So it's possible to happen, but it probably won't happen is what I'm trying to say, but we can at least keep our hopes up. So at the end of the day, Spider-Man 2002 was probably the most revolutionary superhero movie of all time, and it will be for quite a long time. The Avengers Infinity War and Endgame are probably the most ambitious superhero movies of all time, but I wouldn't call them the most innovative because massive crossovers like that have happened before, just not probably to that scale of hype because people are familiar with the MCU these days. So all in all, Spider-Man 2002 really does stand on its own as its own movie. If you take into account the sequels that come afterwards, then it probably works even better in my opinion. But if you just want to sit down and you want to put a movie on that you can just, relax and enjoy while still getting caught up in the drama a little bit, this is absolutely one of those movies that you can do it with every single time without fail. I'm surprised it's actually aged this well. It's just a shame some of the special effects are quite outdated, but beside that, there is absolutely not that much wrong with the movie as it stands. Sam Raimi really does understand the character and the universe of Spider-Man, and he does make quite a lot of cool references throughout this movie and its following sequels about other Spider-Man related lore such as Dr. Connors. So all in all, I think Spider-Man 2002 remains a solid 8 out of 10 movie. It's just really fun to watch, and I do think it's one of the most compelling Spider-Man movies out there, especially compared to something like Far From Home, which wasn't actually all that great when you go back and watch it again and you think about what the other movies set out to accomplish in comparison to that movie. So yeah, that's what I have to say about Spider-Man. Join me next time as we talk about Spider-Man 2. I hope to see you all there. Thank you all for watching, and take care.